All right, guys, we are back after a very long day
A
in
long
court.
day.
Day two, United States versus Sean. So let's jump into today. So today, Cassie Ventura took the stand. I said stage earlier. She took the stand. We know she's a singer, so she is on the stage, but she
Yeah.
was on the stand. A lot more emotional the second half of the day. She's very pregnant, probably due within weeks from now. Her husband, Alex Fine, was
Yeah,
also
he was there.
in court. And we saw him when he left. He looked really,
Stern, like just very cold. Just
yeah,
I need to
yeah.
get out of here.
It
Yeah.
was a lot. I'm curious if he knew some of the details of the things that she
Yeah.
talked about
Yeah.
because yeah, she laid out a lot. She got really specific. So we're gonna
And I
break some of this down.
Yeah, and I will say from both sides, from both the children on Diddy's side and then, the family on Cassie's side, just kind of hearing all these details, I could imagine it's a lot to hear,
Yeah. Well,
honestly.
the daughters were escorted out a
Yes.
couple of times when they
Mm-hmm.
got into some really salacious details, especially
Yes.
sexually explicit details. And I can only imagine that during the second half that they were escorted out again. I can't imagine hearing something like that about
Yeah.
my dad. So
Whew.
so here's what happened. So Cassie, we came back from lunch, and the prosecution really got into some details this time around.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a little slow moving the first half, but this second half, they really jumped in there and they got her to explain
The freak offs.
the freak off. So we'll start there. What is a freak off?
Yeah. Did you kind of get the definition when she kind of explained it? Because it was just so many moving parts. I feel like when it comes to these freak offs, it's so detailed.
Yeah.
Diddy was a director. I will say that. Like he
Yes, very
definitely,
Spielberg with it.
yeah,
So
honestly.
she says when she was about 22, he introduced this idea of voyeurism to her. She
Yes.
says she had no idea what it is. You guys can Google it, but a voyeur is someone who likes to watch other people have sex. Apparently, that's Diddy's kink. He
Yeah.
likes to watch other people have sex, a man having sex with his
His,
woman.
mm-hmm.
So they started engaging with dancers and also escorts.
Yeah.
And so she said that the very first time they did one was when she was
20,
22.
yeah, during her birthday. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it
1 year into their relationship.
yeah, and it became a thing where, first he kind of started, and then apparently it became her job afterwards to kind of find the escorts. And then speaking about the escorts, she definitely broke down like there was at least six main escorts.
Yes,
At least
yes.
six.
Six main escorts, but she also made a point to say that once they started doing these, it became a regular thing.
Yeah.
Like once a week, they were having a freak off. And to be specific, guys, these weren't just like her having sex with a guy and then he'd go home. No. She broke it down into sessions and then overall freak off time. So
Yeah.
one session was with one guy, but they might have 3 sessions within the freak off. And then let's say he leaves, someone else comes. So
Yeah.
she said verbatim 3 to 4 guys within one freak off time period.
A full freak off.
A full freak off.
Yes.
And as we said earlier, sometimes the freak offs would last 36 hours, 72 hours. The longest was 4 days. She said, and I love that the prosecution asked her this, why did she say yes?
Yeah.
And she just kept saying because she loved him. She didn't want to disappoint him. She didn't want him to feel odd or feel what was the
judged,
word? Judged, yes.
Yeah.
Because this is something he was into. She really felt that he trusted her to tell her that was one of his fetishes, and she didn't want to disappoint him by then not wanting to do it. They also had her read text
messages
and emails between the two of them where she might have said to him, hey, I want to have sex tonight. And he'd respond, book such and such. I think that's going to come back to bite the prosecution in the butt when the defense cross-examines her, because it'll be an opportunity for them to show that she was a willing participant and with her own words looked like she wanted to do this, even though she said she only was doing it because.
But on the flip side, I will say if the prosecution is able to kind of pick up on the fact that she loved him so much that she wanted to just kind of please him, like you said earlier, and on top of that, she just wanted any quality time that she can get with him.
Yes.
And if that meant with other people, because there was certain parts that she would say like, hey, I would just wanted this to be over so that I can just kind of get my alone time with him when it was done. So
he said that quite often and so we got the sense listening to her tell these stories that the only times they got together, she saw him was on freak off nights.
Pretty much.
And so she would say yes to doing the freak offs because she's like, oh, well, this will be also some time that I got with my man. That was the takeaway. And I'm sure they're going to have her explain a little bit more. That's really sad when you think about it. You've been with this person 10 years or however many years, 2 years at this point. The only time that you're with them is when there's now other people involved and you guys are having sex with those people.
Yeah.
She did break down and cry. That was the moment, though, when she started to speak about how that made her feel, like that was all she was worth to him, and that was all she could offer. It's the way she even used the word, which caused her to break down. She got choked up. She paused. She grabbed a tissue. I think that was the moment that really was heavy for her.
And I think she quotes saying that, just her being objectified was just thrown around so easily. And that kind of also, again, made her feel like she was worthless at the end of the day,
Yeah. So they also broke down within what exactly was a freak off, what was the freak off toolkit, right? So baby oil was big, right? And why? Sean loved for them to be glistening and oiled up. And I mean, it was like every 5 minutes, like reapply. So they would go through, she said, and I want to make sure I have this correctly. I think she said about 10 bottles.
And the big ones.
The big ones. They would go through 10 bottles per freak off night.
Yeah. And I mean, and like she said, there was a point in time when she actually mentioned there was a blow up pool that they would put lubrication and bottles of oil in, baby oil in. So imagine how many bottles of baby oil they're going through a freak off, if that's the type of things that they're using it for.
She said in one instance when they were at the Le Hermitage Hotel in Beverly Hills that they got a blow-up pool, filled it up with lubricant and baby oil, and she splashed around and jumped in it, and she thought it was a little odd and crazy. They also talked about how they made a mess in a lot of the rooms. And as you can imagine, with that amount of baby oil, lubricant, and all the other things, that they were trashing hotel rooms, and they would get a hefty bill. One hotel in particular, the Intercontinental in New York City, sent them a very high bill to pay because of what they had done in the room. But she described how there were candles, a lot of candles. Diddy was very specific about the smell, the scent of candle he wanted to see them through the candle light.
Yeah, that part was what got me. Yeah.
Yes, he directed every specific detail of it. What else did she say was in the room?
She also mentioned that basically the lighting, like he loved how like he would have like the red light district kind of going on. Yeah. And it would be different lights and
almost like a music video.
Yeah. It kind of went from the candlelight, she said, and then it went into the studio lights. And basically, and I could just imagine like even that, like feeling like you're on a stage, like you said. Yeah. But speaking about messing up the hotel room, the thing that I wanted to think about was, so how come this never leaked earlier? With all these hotel rooms that are being messed up, no one had any information to kind of leak and say, hey, this is what's going on.
That it never even hit the tabloids. Like, hey, Diddy. Well, also, she talks about the aliases. So let's get into that. Yeah. She'd book the rooms, or the staff would book rooms. So she named security. She named these people.
Yes.
Security guards. She named about 6 different ones that worked and were employed during the time that they were together, that would drive, pick things up, supply them with drugs, and then also bring baby oil, bring whatever they needed. She also talked about a travel agent that would sometimes fly escorts if they needed them to be traveled places, and then also personal assistants. She also spoke of how they were helpful in booking rooms and helping to schedule things. Now, at one point she says, though, that they would always act like, oh, well, this is someone that's working with us, because Diddy always wanted this to kind of
especially with the travel agent.
Yeah, under the radar. So I don't know if she was saying that maybe they didn't know what was going on, but I think what the prosecution is trying to set up is that there was still this enterprise, all this staff, all these people who were involved in helping to set up these freak offs. And so it is somewhat of a criminal enterprise, if that's how they want to put it.
But the aliases that they said that they would use was like, hers was Jackie Star.
Jackie Star.
Yeah. And then also for him would be like, well, she also called them the pet names, like Pop, that she said that named after his grandpa.
Her
grandpa. Yeah. Which was also, she said, felt kind of weird.
And he'd call her baby girl, or CC, which was Cassie Combs.
Yeah.
That was a pet name. But when they would check in the hotels, it would be these different aliases. But he would use Frank White. Any of our Biggie fans out there would know that.
And Frank Black too.
And Frank Black. Black. Those would be
Mm-hmm.
the names that they would use when they would check into the rooms at the hotel. Speaking of those guys, she went through an elaborate list of places. So it started off where they would have freak offs in the home, his home, her home. And she said, like, my pretty much all of his homes, except
Yeah,
for one in
for one.
particular in LA. But after that, they were at all the hotels. They were hitting them all up. So London Hotel, the Trump Hotel, the Gramercy Park Hotel in New York. Then she said, honestly, you name it, like
Anywhere.
anywhere in New York City,
Mm-hmm.
they had a freak off. LA, it was the L'Hermitage. That was a frequent one of theirs. The
Mm-hmm.
London,
The lung, yeah.
the Beverly Hills Hotel, and then the Intercontinental, which is no longer there, but that's the one where the altercation happened.
Yeah.
In Miami, she said the Mandarin Oriental,
The Fountain Blue.
the Fountain Blue, and the
Mm-hmm.
Sakai. And she said they always had to have like a junior suite or a
Yes.
suite, a room that had a living room and a bedroom, because most of the times Diddy would stay back in the bedroom and wait while she talked to the escort to let them know that you're really here because we're going to be sleeping together. And my husband, she'd say, wants to watch. In the beginning, Diddy would wear like a mask. They would both wear masks, or he put on like
a bandana and a cap, and she would wear the wigs and her masquerade mask. Yeah. And then after they got comfortable, those things kind of started to fall off, and so, and speaking of comfort, they would also mention that as he got comfortable with the escorts, he would sometimes participate in certain sexual acts, whether it be, he's getting pleasured with her in one way, and then the others are pleasuring her in a different way. But you can see that once he started to develop comfort, things kind of got a little bit more open.
So let's get into that. She did not hold back in describing some of the sexual activity, and so forgive us, but she would say that the sequence of events would start off with maybe she would masturbate, he would masturbate, meaning the escort, Diddy would still watch. Then they might have oral sex, Diddy would still watch. Then from there, she'd get permission to maybe have actual sex. A lot of times she'd ask first, or the escort would have to get permission for them to then have sex. She said specifically, though, at one time, well, not one time, but some instances, Diddy would want her, if the escort had ejaculated on her, he'd want her to wipe the semen,
that was
quote, on his nipples. That's something that he'd like. And he'd participate sometimes in perhaps having sex with her while she was maybe giving the escort oral, or vice versa. But he wasn't always just sitting back and watching. She said sometimes they'd have sex in between another escort coming. So there's a lot of sexual activity happening.
He would sometimes FaceTime as well, just to watch her in another room while she had sex with escorts as well too. So
to be clear, jurors didn't really see any explicit video or photos today, and they didn't see any yesterday. What they did see, though, were photos of people. So as we said, they got to see who the staff members were, and then they showed the escorts. So the 6 escorts that seemed to be in heavy rotation, they showed them a lot. They also named the escort company. She said she liked to use a company called Cowboys for Angels. That was a specific company they used a lot. So much so that her and the owner of the company would text. And so they showed some of those text messages as well. He'd send her photos and be like, what about this guy?
And speaking of that too, she did mention that he had a kink for Black men with large penises. That was something that he really wanted. That, or Latin men as well.
He being Diddy. Yes. That was specifically who he liked. And they escalated. They were using men who were dancers, exotic dancers, and then it went to just straight escorts. The cities too, she said that they rarely didn't transport. Remember, they didn't really transport too many of the escorts to different cities. They would get them in the cities that they were in, except for in one particular instance when they went to Ibiza, when they went to Spain. And then I think she said Turks and Caicos as well. They traveled. So they would travel every now and then, the escorts, but they primarily would have the escorts in the city that they were in. Speaking of the text messages, they also showed a series of messages between her and Diddy, as well as emails between the two. One of the last emails that we did see and text messages, was one she sent him on March 5th, 2016. So that's the same day as the incident in the Intercontinental. And if you guys remember, we at HipHollywood also spoke to her on March 4th and on March 6th. bookends of that incident while she was promoting that movie. So she reads a text message that she sends to him where she's basically trying to tell him, I want to do a freak off. She calls it an FO. I want to FO so bad, but don't want to party too hard and mess my body up.
Hmm.
So she explains that she was trying to tell him like I want to do the freak off, but I don't want to get so drugged and drowsy and all the
Right
things.
before my big night.
Yes. However,
Things went left.
she still participated in the freak off, and
Yeah.
she describes what happened in detail. And that was pretty much the latter part of her testimony
Yeah.
before we ended for the day. But she really, really spells out what happened.
Yes.
Yes. And that there was, in fact, an escort in the room. We won't say his name.
Right.
But she does say that one of their frequent escorts was in the room with them, and that Diddy had already given her a black eye.
Yeah. And that's basically what caused her to want to leave the room. Yeah.
Yes.
So they were in the midst of a freak off when the incident did take place, which, in the defense, they tried to say that it was a phone and that was the reason why, that fight took place. But now as Cassie kind of walked us through it, it kind of did create the whole picture of what exactly happened, why he was dressed that way, why he decided to grab her down, and why she had to run through the hallway without her shoes on because she was, barely dressed from a freak off. And so she kind of spelled it out for us.
And she says she didn't have on shoes because she was trying to leave so quickly.
Yeah.
And she said he got distracted, and that's when she figured this is the best moment for me to escape.
Yeah.
And she goes down the hallway, and then they took us kind of frame by frame of what was happening, and she described what was happening, that he took her stuff back in the room, and then when he comes back, she's on the hallway phone calling security, and then that's where we took a break.
Something that she also mentioned that I think would also kind of tear at our heartstrings is that she was forced to have sex sometimes while she was on her period.
Yes.
And that's why she would kind of mention, like, the room would be filled with different types of fluids, even urine. She said there was times where she choked because there was too much urine in her mouth. Like, I know that might be a little graphic, but that's how much she did.
Yes. She said he would urinate, and he being Sean, and then the escort one time had that one particular incident where that happened, where she started to choke, but that it had happened before, where she'd be laying on the ground and they'd be urinating on her. I think that she really painted a picture during this second half that helped us see exactly what was going on and what she had really endured all that during all that time, but how much she loved him.